Scientists thought the Hadal zone was a dead graveyard at the bottom of the ocean. They were catastrophically wrong. What we've discovered down there in the last decade has rewritten everything we thought we knew about the limits of life on Earth. The Hadal zone begins where the abyss ends, at depths below 20,000 feet. It exists only in the deepest ocean trenches, places so remote and crushing that for most of human history, we assumed nothing could survive there. The pressure alone reaches over 16,000 pounds per square inch. That's like having a fully loaded jumbo jet pressing down on every square inch of your body. For decades, scientists believed these trenches were essentially underwater deserts, barren landscapes where organic material drifted down to decay in darkness. Then we actually went there and looked. In 2014, a team of researchers deployed a camera system into the Mariana Trench. They expected maybe a few scattered bacteria, some simple organisms eking out a minimal existence. Instead, the footage showed something that made them question their instruments. Fish. Not just one or two stragglers, but thriving populations of snailfish swimming through the darkness at depths that should have crushed them instantly. These weren't primitive creatures barely clinging to survival. They were active predators, hunting amphipods the size of your hand, living their lives in a place we'd written off as uninhabitable. That discovery cracked open a door we didn't know existed. Since then, every expedition to Hadal depths has revealed more impossibilities. Swarms of amphipods so dense they look like underwater blizzards. Worms tunneling through sediment that shouldn't support any life whatsoever. Microbes processing chemicals in ways that violate what we thought were the basic rules of biochemistry. The Hadal zone isn't empty. It's teeming, and that changes everything. Here's what makes this so significant. When scientists study extreme environments, they're not just satisfying curiosity about weird places on Earth. They're answering a much bigger question. Where else in the universe could life exist? For years, astrobiologists focused on finding planets with conditions similar to Earth's surface, places with liquid water, moderate temperatures, and sunlight for photosynthesis. But the Hadal zone proves life doesn't need any of that. It thrives in complete darkness, crushing pressure, near freezing temperatures, and without any energy from the sun. Sound familiar? Those are exactly the conditions we believe exist beneath the ice shells of Europa and Enceladus, moons orbiting Jupiter and Saturn. If life can flourish 7 miles down in Earth's oceans, it could absolutely exist in the subsurface oceans of icy moons. The Hadal zone isn't just teaching us about our own planet. It's showing us what to look for out there. But let me take you deeper into what makes these trenches so alien. The Mariana Trench, the most famous of these abyssal valleys, plunges to nearly 36,000 feet at its lowest point. If you drop Mount Everest into the Challenger Deep, its peak would still sit more than a mile underwater. The trench itself was formed by tectonic activity, where one plate slides beneath another, creating these massive scars in the ocean floor. They're geological wounds that have existed for millions of years, completely isolated from the surface world. For something to survive down there requires adaptations that seem like science fiction. Take the Mariana snailfish I mentioned earlier. This creature has no scales. Its bones are barely calcified, more like flexible cartilage. Its body is mostly water and gelatinous tissue, which prevents it from being compressed by the pressure. It's essentially built like a living water balloon, structurally weak, but perfectly suited for its environment. And here's the remarkable part. It's not struggling to survive, it's thriving. These fish are apex predators in their zone, dominating their ecosystem. Then there are the amphipods, crustaceans that have evolved into something nightmarish. In shallow water, amphipods are tiny, maybe the size of a rice grain. In the Hadal zone, they grow to over a foot long. They're scavengers, but calling them that undersells their brutality. When a dead whale falls to the ocean floor, these creatures swarm it by the thousands, stripping the carcass to bone in a matter of days. Their bodies are reinforced with aluminum they extract from the sediment, creating a kind of biological armour that protects them from the acidic, high-pressure water. But the real shock came from the microbes. Scientists always knew bacteria could survive in extreme conditions. What they didn't expect was the sheer diversity and metabolic creativity of Hadal microbes. These organisms have developed chemical processes that don't exist anywhere else on Earth. They're breaking down organic matter using pathways we're still trying to understand, producing energy from reactions that shouldn't be thermodynamically favourable. Some of these microbes form massive mats on the seafloor, carpets of living tissue covering acres of trench bottom. They're not just surviving, they're building entire ecosystems. This is where our assumptions fell apart. We thought life in the deep ocean would be sparse, simple, barely hanging on. Instead, we found complexity. We found abundance. We found communities of organisms that have been evolving in isolation for millions of years, developing solutions to problems we didn't know existed. And here's what keeps me up at night. We've only explored a fraction of these trenches. The Hadal zone covers an area roughly equivalent to Australia, but we've surveyed less than 1% of it. Every time we send down a camera or a submersible, we discover new species. Not variations of known animals, but entirely new families of life that evolved independently in these isolated trenches. The question isn't whether the Hadal zone contains more surprises. It's how many and how fundamental they'll be to our understanding of biology itself. Because if we were this wrong about our own planet, what else have we missed? One of the most disturbing discoveries came from plastic pollution. In 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo descended to the Challenger Deep and found a plastic bag sitting on the seafloor. Think about that journey. Someone used that bag on the surface probably for 15 minutes. It got discarded, entered the ocean, and then spent years sinking through every zone we've discussed, falling through complete darkness for 7 miles until it finally came to rest at the deepest point on Earth. We've contaminated places no human has ever visited. But the plastic wasn't alone. Vescovo's team found candy wrappers, microplastics embedded in amphipod tissue, and synthetic fibres in the sediment samples. These organisms have been living in isolation for millions of years, and within just a few decades of industrial production, we've poisoned their environment. The implications go beyond pollution. Some Hadal organisms are ingesting microplastics, incorporating them into their tissue. We're fundamentally altering creatures that evolved in complete separation from the surface world. And we have no idea what the long-term consequences will be. Here's something most people don't consider. The deep ocean isn't static. There are currents down there, massive flows of water that move between ocean basins. These currents can transport pollutants, microplastics, and chemical contaminants across the entire planet. A piece of plastic discarded in New York could eventually end up in the Java Trench. A chemical spill in the Pacific might contaminate the Puerto Rico Trench years later. The deep ocean is connected in ways we're only beginning to map. Which brings me to something even more troubling: deep sea mining. Companies are developing technology to extract minerals from the ocean floor. The target zones are abyssal plains and the slopes of deep trenches, areas rich in polymetallic nodules. These are potato-sized rocks containing cobalt, nickel, copper, and rare earth elements. They form over millions of years as minerals precipitate from seawater, and they're sitting on the ocean floor, seemingly ready for harvest. The mining process involves sending remotely operated vehicles to vacuum up these nodules, pumping them to surface ships. Sounds straightforward except for one problem. Those nodules are habitats. Microbes colonize their surfaces. Small invertebrates shelter beneath them. Removing the nodules doesn't just take the minerals, it destroys ecosystems that took millions of years to develop. And unlike forests, which can regrow, or coral reefs, which can theoretically recover, these deep-sea communities operate on geological timescales. Once destroyed, they're gone for longer than human civilization has existed. The seabed mining industry argues that the environmental impact will be minimal and localized. But every time we've made that assumption about ocean ecosystems, we've been catastrophically wrong. We thought overfishing would only affect target species. It collapsed entire food webs. We thought coastal development would have limited impact. It destroyed nursery habitats for countless marine animals. Our track record on predicting ocean ecosystem responses is abysmal. Now we're proposing to industrialize the least understood environment on Earth. Let me put this in perspective. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the Hadal zone. We've mapped Venus in higher resolution than our own ocean floor. The entire deep ocean, everything below 200 meters, represents the largest living space on the planet. It contains more biodiversity than all terrestrial ecosystems combined, and we've explored roughly 5% of it. You're probably thinking, how is that possible? How have we not explored our own planet? The answer is brutally simple. It's hard and expensive. A single deep-sea expedition costs millions of dollars. The equipment required to withstand extreme pressure is extraordinarily sophisticated. A deep-sea submersible costs as much as a spacecraft. And unlike space, where you can see your destination, the deep ocean is utterly black. You're navigating blind, mapping as you go, never knowing what's beyond your lights. But here's what keeps me fascinated. Every expedition finds something unexpected. In 2020, researchers exploring a trench near New Zealand discovered a species of Hadal snailfish living at depths we thought impossible. This fish was surviving at pressures that should have crushed its cellular structure. When they analysed its biology, they found it had evolved a completely novel protein structure that maintains cell integrity under extreme pressure. That protein might have applications in medicine, materials science, or biotechnology. We literally don't know yet because we just discovered it. The deep ocean contains solutions to problems we haven't solved. Organisms down there have developed enzymes that work in near-freezing temperatures, proteins that function under crushing pressure, and chemical processes that operate without sunlight. These are biological technologies refined over hundreds of millions of years, and we're only beginning to catalogue them. Some scientists believe the deep ocean might hold clues to how life originated on Earth. The conditions around hydrothermal vents, with their chemical-rich water and energy gradients, closely resemble theories about early Earth environments. Studying how life survives in these extreme conditions might tell us how life began in the first place. So here's where we actually stand. The Hadal zone is the largest unexplored frontier on Earth. It contains ecosystems we don't understand, species we've never seen, and biological adaptations that could revolutionize technology. It's also increasingly threatened by pollution and potential mining operations. And we're making decisions about its future based on almost no data. That's not just scientifically reckless, it's existentially short-sighted. Because once we destroy these ecosystems, once we contaminate these environments, we can't undo it. We'll have permanently erased entire branches of Earth's evolutionary history before we even knew they existed. The deep ocean isn't just interesting, it's irreplaceable. We thought we knew our planet's limits. The Hadal zone proved we were working with assumptions instead of evidence. Every trench we explore rewrites the biology textbooks. Every sample we recover contains organisms that shouldn't exist according to our models. We're 7 miles down and still finding abundance where we predicted emptiness. The deep ocean isn't just teaching us about Earth, it's showing us what's possible in the universe, and we're running out of time to learn those lessons before we destroy what we haven't even discovered yet.